Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transformation is Strategy, a podcast brought to you by the experts at Roland Berger Americas, where we explore fresh perspectives and practical strategies to help business owners create a lasting competitive edge. I'm your host, Mackenzie Puddesy, and the topic for this episode is the aftermarket trends shaping the automotive industry in 2026. Joining me for today's conversation is Neury Freitas, Head of North America Aftermarket. Hello, Neury. Welcome to the show.
Really happy to be here.
So to start us off, could you tell us a bit more about your role at Roland Berger Americas and how you might define aftermarket?
Absolutely. So I've been working for Roland Berger since 2008. I have worked in Brazil, which is where I started. And then I had a stint working in Europe, in Germany. And since 2014, I've been in the US. And as you said, now I lead the automotive aftermarket practice. And automotive aftermarket is something that can be defined in many ways, but the way I like to say it, which I think is the simplest, is anything that happens with a car after it has been sold is automotive aftermarket, right? So you can think about you need new tires, you have a squeaking brake, and then you need new brakes, or it was a cold day and then you couldn't crank your engine, you need a new battery, or you might have been involved in a collision. Anything that would require, right? A rock hit your windshield and created a crack. So all of that is aftermarket. And this is a very complex value chain as a whole, because you have the vehicle manufacturers, you have the dealers, you have the suppliers, you have the distributors, and then you have where I like saying the magic happens, which is the repair shops, the collision shops, the quick lube chains. So it's, as you can see, it's something I'm really passionate for. But hopefully that was a simple description of the aftermarket.
Well, yeah, no, that's great. I think that's like a great way to sum it up, and we can dig into some of those nuances here together today.
Yeah.
So thanks for setting the stage on that. Now, we know that CES conference kicked off 2026 with some interesting new developments in the tech and the AI spheres. But when it comes to automotive aftermarket, what were some of the key takeaways or trends that you saw? Anything that you could have, have a meaningful impact on the automotive aftermarket industry this year or in the next few years?
No, absolutely. So CES has happened a little bit over 2 months ago. And every single year at the conference, you always get to see and know a lot of innovation, a lot of new things. The interesting thing for automotive aftermarket itself is that this year CES has disappointed. At least I was disappointed with that. The companies, they were not bringing a lot of innovation that they were directly impacting the aftermarket, right? A few years back, you had, for example, Amazon really showing all of the home services. So people could buy parts at Amazon and have the service performed at their home or at a shop of their preference. So lots of real innovation that were bringing a lot of convenience to consumers. And then this year that hasn't happened. You had a few companies that they were bringing very niche products to the aftermarket, but nothing that was let's say mind-blowing change that would cause the aftermarket to really move. One exception, right? But again, this is something that you have to extend the scope of how we consider aftermarket, is that what we saw a lot at CES was these autonomous mobility companies. So you had, of course, Waymo as being the biggest one. And there were a few other startups offering the service or the technology. And why that can be something very important to the aftermarket, right, is because that can change the power dynamics of the aftermarket. If you have, for example, I'll just use an example. If you have a taxi fleet or Uber or Lyft, you have different drivers, different owners in a lot of the time. And each owner or each small company, they make their own decisions on which parts to buy, where to take their vehicles to be serviced, and everything around their aftermarket needs. As we migrate to a bigger company, so think Waymo, for example, the power changes because now the vehicles, they are coming back to a base every single night, right, when they are not being used. And because you have a large enough fleet, you can actually, the companies, they'll have more power. They can actually choose the parts they're going to buy. A lot of times they're performing the service themselves. When I say themselves is they have like usually a workshop at their location, and you can see that that changes the power dynamics. One thing that's super interesting is that Waymo, of course, is I think that the biggest player now. Tesla with the RoboCab is something that is trying to get a share of that market as well. And every single OEM or every single vehicle manufacturer, they are also thinking about how they can get a piece of the pie, right? Or most of, I would say, to be a little bit more careful, like most of the vehicle manufacturers. And if every single vehicle manufacturer now they would have a fleet of autonomous vehicles going across the major cities in the US and globally as well, like we are talking about the US now, you can see that again, the power dynamics of the aftermarket will change. The OEMs, they would capture a little bit more of the market of this segment, which is not like the biggest portion of the market, but it's a relevant portion of the market because those cars, they drive a lot. And the places where the vehicles they are serviced would change as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. If they're driving all the time, probably service needs to be taken into account more often, more chance for damage, more chance for wear down. And I'm curious, so then you're saying the magic sort of happens in the workshops. So if a lot of these workshops are now being in-housed, does that significantly change sort of obviously yes the supply, and if they're choosing to buy 100 parts from one producer rather than that sort of being broken up by a bunch of individual owners, but do those negotiations and contracts change a lot by being in-housed?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that the best comparison, right, or proxy for what might happen is if we look at the commercial vehicles. When I'm thinking about commercial vehicles, I'm thinking about like bigger trucks. So most of the service at those long haul trucks, they are also happening at the base. They are performed by the fleets, right? And then if you see which parts they buy, like how much the margins they are distributed across the value chain, you can see that this is very different from the traditional repair and replace when you have like you and me like taking our vehicles to be serviced, right? The profit pools they change, the power dynamics they change. And again, like we are seeing that now, right? You can go and really like talk to any commercial vehicle fleet operator, and then if you compare that with, let's say, your neighborhood repair shop, you will see that things are completely different.
Interesting. Well, that'll be something to keep a pulse on for the next couple of years here as that grows and shifts. I want to dig in a little bit more about EVs in general. I imagine most of those autonomous vehicles are EVs, but how does the aftermarket for EVs vary from your typical gasoline vehicle?
Okay. This has been like the $1 million question, I think, for a long time. Let me start talking a little bit about the changes in the penetration of EVs, right? So if we go back a few years, when EV technology was still like really new, people said that that technology will never mature, and then people will not accept. And then Tesla came with the Model S and changed the market a lot. And since then, we had like a really steep growth. If we go back now 3-4 years, the entire market was expecting that like 5 years down the road, we would have like half of the vehicles being sold, the new vehicles being EVs. And although the vehicles in the share of EVs in the vehicle park takes a while for them to actually like, cause an impact in the aftermarket, if you have 50% of new vehicles being sold being EV, that impact is much, much quicker, right? What has happened is because of like policy changes and the end of the government incentive for people to buy EVs, the share of EVs being sold in the US has stagnated and actually is expected to drop this year versus last year and potentially going back up slowly in the next coming years, right? So all the changes that the entire industry was getting prepared to deal with, they are going to happen, but to a much smaller extent. And in like the companies that we used to call, they are going to be the last man standing because internal combustion engine vehicles or ICE vehicles, they're going to like reduce in their share very, very quickly. That has extended, like the period in which actually you'll be servicing them has extended a lot, right? I think that this is the first important thing to mention. Now, answering your question, right? And this is again, it's a trick question because the answer depends on which product category you are talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is very, very like is drastically different. I will start with some obvious ones, but if you compare like what's the need for oil, right? Engine oil, and of course, if you have an internal combustion engine, you need it. If you have an EV, you don't. So that's a category that it drops, right? It's 0 or 1. If you go to, in the other hand, to tires, actually, the tires in EVs they wear out faster than the tires in internal combustion engine vehicles. There are multiple reasons for that, but one of the biggest ones is that you have the instant torque, and that ends up wearing the tire faster. The other reason is the compounds of the EV tires they are slightly different because you don't have the engine noise, so you need to be more cautious about the noise that the tires are making, and that changes the way those tires they are going to wear. So if you are playing in the tire space, you see EV as an opportunity, not as a risk. There are less obvious product categories, right? So if you think about brakes, people say, yes, every single EV has a brake, and they do. With that said, because you are transforming, and I'm like going very technical now, because you are transforming kinetic energy from the car moving back into electricity and then storing in the battery, you don't need to wear your brake pads. So the consumption of brake pads and brake rotors and even like brake calipers, the replacement rate of those products, they drop a lot if you have an EV. And not only if you have an EV, actually, if you have a hybrid, we have been seeing already a pretty big drop in the replacement rate of those products. So I know I'm giving you like a complicated answer here, but in the end, this is a very complicated question. Overall, the expectation is that the cost to maintain an EV will be lower than that of an ICE vehicle, with the exception that we don't know what's going to happen with the high voltage batteries. Because as of now, the high voltage batteries, they are very expensive to be exchanged in a car or replaced in a car. And then if you add the cost of a battery at the costs we have now, then actually the cost of having an EV in the long term can be the same or even higher than that of an ICE vehicle. So there are a lot of assumptions that would have to make on like how frequently and when you need to change the batteries. If you are going to have to change the batteries, that's going to impact what we call the total cost of ownership or TCO of a vehicle.
Fascinating. And I imagine there's lots of projections and assumptions, but as technology advances, changes, we just are kind of looking at a moving target. Would you say that's
Absolutely.
fair?
I think a number, right? And again, this is a range and depends on the vehicle manufacturer, depends on the car, but without considering the high voltage battery, the expected cost of maintaining an EV is between 30 and 40% lower than that of an ICE because you have fewer moving parts and the entire system is considered simpler, right?
Before we move on, just a small personal anecdote. I had rented a car and I was driving from France and through the Alps of Switzerland to Italy. And I had put in the map that where we were going. And I was like, there's nowhere we're going to get there. It's like 40 kilometers away. And we only had maybe like 20% battery. But because it was all downhill, we
You charged your battery.
ended up like more. And I was like, no, it's impossible. There's no way. But sure enough, it just kept going up. And I was like, this is kind of magic. This is
Yeah,
great.
that's interesting as well. I was driving like down one of the Colorado passes and I had a plug-in hybrid and the same thing happened. Once I got down there, I had longer range than when I started. So yeah, it's magical, right? That you were really like recovering the energy and putting that back in the battery so you can use it in the future.
It's fantastic. All right, so we've covered EVs and some of those key industry trends that you're seeing there. But I also understand that last year you conducted an automotive aftermarket pulse 2025 study. Could you share what the scope of that study was with us?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So this is something that I'm really passionate for. Um, Let me first talk about like why we created this study, and then I'll talk to you about what the study is and what we are covering. So the automotive aftermarket like lacks information that you can trust, and it lacks historical information that will allow you to track trends, right? There are few data providers, there are few data points, but overall, like if you're thinking about consumers and workshops, right? B2B, B2C, and how those two things they related to each other, how fast what's happening in the industry creates impact that really changes the industry. This is something that we felt as a company that wasn't really in existence, right? So we said that we need to create something that we can start like tracking every single year. So that's how the Automotive Pulse study was imagined, was created. It's been a few years that we've been doing it already. We expanded from covering 5 countries. We are now covering 13 countries in Americas, in Europe, and in Asia. We are covering China. So more countries to come, but we are slowly adding more countries. But one thing that we wanted to make sure that this study would allow us and every single person reading the study to do is to compare how things are evolving year over year. So we created a set of as fixed as possible questions, right? Because of the changes, at times we need to change it, but in a way that every single year we can track. So now we can go back to 2019 and see, oh, how people would answer. Are you comfortable in taking your car to an independent repair shop, your EV to an independent repair shop? Like the share of people that they are comfortable in 2019 is completely different from that of 2025, right? And then I already talked about a little bit of the study. So we're covering 13 countries, and we have a survey that happens usually summertime here in the US, but it's a global. So at places it's winter. And we ask 6,000 consumers and 600 shops. So we are covering B2B and B2C. And then there are like a multitude of questions, but we want to know which parts they buy, why they buy those parts, where they take their vehicles to be serviced, what are their impressions around autonomous driving, about EV, and a lot of other things. And then the other thing we've started doing as well is every single year, like things change and like new trends they come up. So every year we have a special topic. Last year, the topic that we talked about it was convenience. So we wanted to know what kind of convenience services people they were looking for when servicing their vehicles or when like trying to service their vehicles, and then what they are getting from other industries, right? We have an example here. Like it's super convenient if you want to buy a coffee now. You can buy on the app, just like go to the store and pick it up. It will be ready to go. Um, there are things that they are very hard in the vehicle repair cycle. So we were really interested to know about convenience. And there was like fascinating. We had like a super fascinating set of insights from
Cool. Yeah, no, it sounds like you have a great sample size. You're covering a lot of countries, B2B, B2C. So before we dig into the convenience factor, which I'm curious about, what were just some of the key takeaways from the 2025 study that you guys found?
Absolutely. So I'll keep, I think, in my eyes at least, like the most important ones. So what has happened in the industry, and this is like almost like global, but I'll focus on the US right now, is that people's disposable income grew less than the cost of maintaining their vehicles,
Mm.
right? And this has this is due to like labor increase, so like really like the salaries increase and the cost for the parts, and then a few years back we had like supply chain issues, lots of things they really happened, right? And that has created a need, because if you need your vehicle is still functioning so you can commute to work, to school, or you can do your work delivery, whatever you have to deliver, you need to repair the vehicle if there is a problem, right? And but now if you have less money to do it, or at least like as a percentage of your income you have like a lower percentage, now you have to start thinking about having trade-offs, right? And then this is one a clear trend that we've seen. So as I mentioned before, we track the quality of the parts that people they buy, uh, the quality of the parts that the consumers they want to have in their vehicles as they are being repaired. And if you go to the B2B, it's the quality of the parts that the repair shops or the manager of a repair shop or the technician recommends, right? So those are the two things that we track. And then we can clearly see that there is a what we call in the automotive aftermarket like trade down. So usually in the automotive aftermarket, you have the good, better, best structure. You can always have like parts of different qualities. So you have usually like the OEM part, the original one, and then you have what people call like OE equivalent, and then you can keep going down, right? And then the share of consumers and the share of workshops that they trade down one or two levels has increased a lot, right? And this is because again, they are shorter on cash. My vehicle needs to keep moving. I don't have the same money, so I'm going to make those trade-offs. So that was super interesting. And then the other way you can save money is actually changing the channel where you perform your repair. There is a magical number here, right? Like people usually like if you are around the 3 to 5 year mark when you need to go through the change for the first change of tires in your vehicle, that's usually when you go out of the OEM channel. The OEMs they have like in general, okay, more expensive tire offers installed in your car than the independent aftermarket. And then people go take their vehicles to the independent aftermarket because there's a lot of price transparency on tires, and then they end up having a good experience. And then a lot of those consumers they never get back to the OEM, right? So this is like a major point once you see that jump from the OEM channel to the independent aftermarket. And then so as the vehicles they are newer, you have more people going to the OEM. As the vehicles they age, you have fewer and fewer people taking their vehicles to the OEM. So the other thing that this survey showed as well is that the speed in which people go out of the OEM channel has accelerated. Because as you go out of the OEM channel, you are using cheaper parts. And on average, the labor rate, the hourly labor rate is lower. It's much lower in the independent aftermarket than it is in the OEM channel. Okay?
And Neury, do you believe that's because of just pure economics, or are there other factors that you guys are spotting or think might be causing this shift to happen? What's behind this?
So economics, I think, is one of the, let's say, major drivers. But if you go and you rank why people choose the channel they choose to repair their vehicles, the first two reasons, they are not price. The first two reasons are convenience. And I had a great experience in the past at that location or with that mechanic or with that person, right? So you probably know where I'm going to now. As I mentioned, right? Once you go to the independent aftermarket, if the chains, if the stores can be a mom and pop or a chain, if they are really being careful and catering, taking good care of their customers, then the experience is good. And let's be honest, you have like 17,000 dealers, OEM dealers in the country, and you have like 100,000 ish independent repair shops across the country. So of course, it's much more convenient. It's closer to your, like most of the cases, it will be closer to you as a consumer to take your vehicle to an independent repair shop. And then you go there, you have a good experience. And oh, by the way, I paid less. And then I think you can see all of those things, they compound, right? So this is why the OEMs, they've been fighting a lot. And again, different OEMs, they have different strategies. Some are more successful than others. if they want to capture, I know I'm going a tangent here, but if you want to capture like more of the share, the OEMs, they really have to nail that service experience, because they will be, in the largest majority of the case, more expensive than the independent.
I like that. So let's dig in a little more into the convenience factors that you'd uncovered in the report there, because I know we talked about service, we talked about, that kind of a few years back Amazon had this option where you could ship a part, order online, comfort of home, and then get it um, put on or installed as needed. So what are the other things? Are you seeing those perpetuate, or what other convenience things did you pick up with this special theme this year or
Yeah,
last year?
this is for me a very interesting question. So why convenience is important, right? I think we as consumers, or I think even like human beings, like we want convenience as much as possible, right? And then people, we started to have great experiences outside of the automotive industry. I gave the example of coffee, right? You can really like order coffee, go and pick it up. You can have it delivered. But it's not only that. Even like grocery stores, you can place an order, drive by it, someone brings like the grocery bags to your car, put in your trunk. A lot of that has changed during COVID, because actually, like, we had to be super creative as a society to deal with that situation. But a lot of people that they were like blocked, or that they were not comfortable in using those tools, in using the internet and e-commerce in general, they said, whoa, this is like something really convenient and it's not more expensive. And I want that. So this is the first thing. The second thing, and it's a small share, but it's still something that we could see that it's relevant. If you go now to let's say, the three biggest EV OEMs in the US, of course, you have Tesla as the biggest, and then you have Rivian, and then you have Lucid. Most of the service that they are providing, or at least that's their goal, is supposed to be mobile. Meaning that whenever possible, if it's not something that's super complex, they are going to drive to your place and they are going to perform this service for you, right? See how convenient it is. You are at your home or you are at your work, someone comes, solves your problem, goes away. You just get a notification saying your service has been performed, it was covered under warranty, or like your credit card has been charged. And now imagine that you have, in my example, Tesla, and you have another vehicle that's not an EV. And then you need to call the dealer. The dealer tells you that the only availability is 3 weeks down the road, and it will be 6:30 a.m. Otherwise, you have to wait 6 weeks. And this is reality. Now, again, not every single OEM, but a lot of the OEMs, they have that problem. They have availability problem. Like, see the comparison, the level of service. So people that they had the experience, they said, I want that, right? So I think those two things, they have been driving the desire of consumers for convenience. Okay. Now, if you go to the other side, to the business side, so this is something that I really think is fascinating, right? If you are a repair shop chain and you found a profitable way to operate either mobile services or pickup and return, for example, services like that, the likelihood of you having a higher average ticket is much, much higher. Because if you are waiting at the dealer or at a repair shop and someone, like, let's say you went there to change tires, okay? Simple example. And then someone comes back to you and says, I took out your tires, you need to change brakes, your suspension is leaking, you need to leave your car here. You come back tomorrow, or it will take 5 hours. You say, no, like, I need to get back to work, or I need to do something. Don't do it. I'll come back later. Now, see the other like extreme. Someone went to your home, picked up the car, brought to the repair shop, and then made a video, which is what's happening now, explaining exactly what the problem is and making a professional recommendation. You don't need a car, right? So people are much more likely to actually accept that. And I'm not saying like that the workshops, they're doing anything wrong. Like, the largest majority of the workshops, when they make a recommendation, is because it's really needed. But now people are more likely to actually accept it. So you see, there is like a dual benefit. The consumer has a benefit, and then the workshops that they are implementing that, they have the benefit as well with an average ticket, right? You see, those things are interesting. And in the automotive pools, we've uncovered that like, yes, people, they are really interested in more convenience. From a B2B perspective, we saw that a lot of the workshops, they are already offering or they are thinking about offering those services. It's not easy to make it profitable, right? You need to be super careful with that when you are a workshop or a workshop chain, right? And what is interesting here as well is that a good chunk of the consumers that they said, I'm looking for those services, they're even willing to pay a premium for that. It might not be a huge premium, it might be like a 5%, a 10%, but you can see the opportunities, right? Like people, they value convenience like enough that they are willing to pay something for that. So I think that all of that together is something that should really make the repair shops and the suppliers and the OEMs thinking about how they can start offering more and more of those convenience services.
Right. I love that. And I totally relate. Like I can just imagine myself in that decision making moment and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm ready to go or I don't want to wait longer. And so many of those things are something I feel like I would actually do.
Yeah.
So because of all these, rising expectations around customers and convenience and how this is shift, what are the sort of things over the next few years here that or the service models perhaps that need to evolve to meet those expectations? What's really going to differentiate sort of the leaders over these next few years from the laggards or those that get left behind? Any tips?
Absolutely. And again, if we go back to like how complex the automotive aftermarket is, right? I'll try to give an answer, at least like to some steps of the value chain. So if you are a supplier, right? Managing complexity is something that will be absolutely critical. Why? Because be it EV or be it hybrid, the number of parts you need to carry, the number of parts you need to forecast the demand for, and that you need to help the distributors carry the inventory for is going to increase. It has been increasing, and then the speed of increase has accelerated a lot, right? So dealing with that, I think it's one of the crucial things. We have talked to many of our clients, and yes, they said like we are seeing the challenge, and it's not only a production challenge, a commercial challenge. It's a financial challenge as well because now they need to carry themselves more inventory, so you have more working capital going around it, right? If you go to the next step of the value chain, so the suppliers, they send the parts to the retailers and distributors. It's something highly related to that as well, right? It's that the type of vehicles that they are in each region of the country, they are getting more and more diverse, right? If we go to California, for example, you have many more EVs than if you are like in Montana or other states. I know that the dimensions are very different, but I'm just like getting two extreme examples, right? And what you need to carry, how fast you need to adapt your inventory, your supply chain is also crucial for that. So that relates to the complexity that I was talking about. Still, if we stay in the retail segment of the market now, and it's related to convenience, is how can the retailers cater to that segment of the market that they want to make a purchase online, right? They need to create ways to supply those products. And what is really interesting, right? If you go and you think about like the big four retailers in the US, a lot of the online or the e-commerce sales, they are actually picked up in store. But it's super interesting that the sale was generated online. So people, they were sure that they would find the part they needed at the store and they just go there, pick it up. As you can see back, it's convenience, right? So those two things, managing your supply chain complexity and making sure that you are catering to that segment of the market that's looking for convenience, that's something that's crucial. If we keep going the value chain now, and as I mentioned before, where the magic happens, right? So I think that the biggest challenge for the workshops right now is they need to get better trained So the vehicles, they are getting more complex. And it's not only electric vehicles. You have ADAS, all those driving assistance systems, and then calibrating them. It's not that simple. Or you need specialized equipment. You need specialized training. If we go back to EV, you need, again, specialized tools. And if you're not careful, those batteries, they are high voltage. They can like hurt someone. So you need to have additional equipment. So the first thing in the repair shop space or step of the value chain is improve the way or increase the focus in training. Make sure that you have the people there. Those jobs, they have been facing a huge shortage of technicians. We don't think that that's going to get better. So training will be crucial so you can actually, in the end, increase the productivity of the workforce you manage to get. And then the last one is really around convenience, is like find a way to provide the service, provide the convenience that your customers, they are looking for, right? So very interesting concepts, which might seem simple, but a lot of those stores, they are open, let's say 7 to 6. And then if you are working during that time, it can be very hard for you to drop off the car. So some companies, they've started thinking and creating ways that you can actually have like a after hours key drop off. You go drop off your car, leave the key in a safe place, get an Uber or a Lyft to go back home. And then the same thing for the pickup. They have a safe box, they send you a code, you enter the code, you get your key and you go, right? It does not need to be like something overly complicated. Yes, mobile service is great. And it's something that the consumers, they value a lot. Pickup and return is something that's it's great as well, and the consumers, they love once you offer them. But simpler solutions that you wouldn't need to really like change or hire new people or change drastically the way you perform your day-to-day operation are things that the consumers, they will value, and it can help you increase the retention rate and the loyalty of the consumers, that they would keep coming back to your shops.
Neury, I think you've given us a lot of nuggets of wisdom, a lot of really valuable things to think about here, and that people out there in the industry can take advantage of. But a question we like to ask all of our experts on the show is, what's one piece, just one, of advice you would give to businesses that are looking to stay ahead of the curve and compete based on the trends that we're seeing in the automotive aftermarket industry for 2026?
That's an interesting question. And I think this is true for every single company, is you really need to manage your costs so you can make the right investments to stay ahead, be in the product you are producing or in the service you are providing to your customers.
Excellent. That's very smart. That's very smart. Well, thank you, Neury. That about wraps up our discussion for today. It's been a great conversation. I truly appreciate all of your insights and strategies to help business owners navigate this ever-evolving landscape. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. And for our listeners out there, if you'd like to learn more about what Neury and the team at Roland Berger Americas are working on, visit www.rolandberger.com. And if you're a fan of this show, please share it with your colleagues. And of course, be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or Podigy. We'll see you next time.